Back once again and streaming live from quarantine. It is your hottest source for Google Slides in Santa Cruz County and, dare I say, even the Bay Area. I'm getting a lot of viewer feedback now, an increasing amount of viewer feedback, and one question that I always get from people is they tell me, well, I go to sleep and I see all this weird stuff. I see these strange images, often things that I would never see in the daytime or while I was awake, and it just seems like these things are impossible. So what's going on? Do I need to send my brain back to the repair shop? Do I need to take it to the Genius Bar at the Apple Store, or am I broken? And the good news is that no, it's fine. What you are seeing is nothing all that unusual. What you're seeing is called a dream. That is what you are experiencing. So once you know that what you're experiencing is dreams and not a crack in reality or anything like that, the next thing you may be asking is, well, what do these dreams mean? Because they can't mean nothing. They're too weird to mean nothing. Fair question. And this is the first in a series of videos dedicated to explaining what those dreams mean, on the basis of the dream book of Artemidorus of Daldis, the ancient world's best interpreter of dreams, or at least the only one whose work has survived intact into the present. It's a longish book. It comes in 5 books. So it contains basically, I would say, all of the dreams that you could possibly have, whether you dream that you have ants in your ears, as commonly people do, or you dream that you just got a new toga that you're putting on, which happens too sometimes. The whole range of dreams that you could possibly have pretty much is in this book. There are lots of important dreams to talk about. This is kind of an intro to Artemidorus, to his dream book, that kind of thing. Now, when it comes to the dude himself, we know a lot less about him than we would like to know. We know that he is from, just because it's his name, well, not just because it's his name, actually. We know he's from Daldis, it's a little town in Lydia, which is part of Asia Minor, which is on the west end of what's now Turkey, as you can see on this map. Big arrow pointing to where Daldis is. Now, we know this because it's part of his name, Artemidorus Daldianus. But we also know that that seems right because his Greek contains a lot of local words, a lot of words that are local to Western Asia Minor that show up on like inscriptions there and nowhere else. Now, despite that kind of local flavor, his Greek is still stylistically very competent. It's the Greek of a literate and fancy man. It's a good Greek. He's a good writer. And this makes sense because he lives in the later kind of 2nd century, to judge from the names he drops. He's a big name dropper. And this is a time at which Greek ability is really in high demand. It's the sort of full flower of a thing known as the Second Sophistic, which is this kind of cultural movement in which rhetoricians, public speakers, are rock stars. They're treated as rock stars. They'll go to a place and hold a concert in the amphitheater, and this concert will consist of like people just giving them topics on which they have to give speeches. And they always give really awesome speeches, and that's why they bring the big crowds and make the big bucks. So these are the kind of the celebrities of Artemidorus of Daldis' day, and he drops their names quite a lot in his dream book by way of indicating that he's talking about dreams that they have, or dreams that he's heard that they have. It doesn't always seem that he likes them very much, because when he talks about sophists, which is what these rhetoricians are called in the 2nd century CE, he treats them as kind of a bad sign if you see them. He lumps them together with other sort of disreputable groups of people like flutists and trumpet players, So he's not a big fan of these people and their cultural milieu, but he's very clearly in contact with it. He thinks that these rhetoricians have essentially ruined dream interpretation. He says this in the preface to his big book. He says, well, all these fancy speakers are just talking about dreams in such a way as to impress audiences. They want to give fancy speeches about dreams, and they don't care anything about the art of dream interpretation at all. They don't care about getting it right. And because they're so careless about getting dream interpretation right, they give the art of dream interpretation a bad name. What Artemidorus of Daldis is trying to do in his book is restore the status of dream interpretation as a kind of an expertise. Bring it back into the zone of science. Because throughout antiquity, there's this kind of weird dialectic contrast going on where, by and large, it does seem like people believe that some dreams are meaningful. Some dreams can predict the future. But at the same time, there's a general distrust of professional dream interpreters. The thought being that these people are just hucksters and frauds. If a dream predicts the future, either it's going to be so weird that you won't understand it until it's too late, or it's going to be really obvious and you don't need an interpreter. That's what Artemidorus is trying to correct. He wants to say, well, dream interpretation really is a kind of an expertise. It's a science. It's not just all scam stuff. It's not like those other fraudulent snake oil style forms of future prediction that you see all over the place. And he says toward the end of his dream interpretation book, which is called the Onera Criticon, I should have mentioned this earlier, the Dream Judger. Toward the end of the book, he talks about, well, what happens if you dream about a dream interpreter? What if you see a dream interpreter in your dreams? And Artemidorus says, well, yeah, you should definitely trust them, because anything they tell you in a dream is going to be true on account of how dream interpreters are so trustworthy in real life, in waking life. If you see somebody trustworthy in a dream and they tell you something, then you should trust them. Then, maybe unnecessarily, he goes on to say, well, if you see any of the following people in your dream and they tell you something, it's clearly a lie, so don't trust them. The people he lists are physiognomists, Pythagoreans, palm readers, astrologists, people who divine with sieves, which is this weird kind of thing that's not totally understood, cheese diviners. This whole big crowd of non-trustworthy future predictors. And Artemidorus is saying, well, I'm not like them. I'm a dream interpreter. Dream interpreters are to be trusted. You should trust us. We are scientists. We're not just snake oil salesmen and quack solvers. So that's sort of his jam, and I take him at his word, and I think you should too. You should trust Artemidorus of Daldis. He's a dream interpreter. He knows what he's talking about. He travels all over the place to gather the dreams that he's telling you about. He gathered a lot of really ancient manuscripts and looked carefully at those. You can take him at his word, and I hope you will over the next several weeks as I continue this series. Now, there's a kind of a method which Artemidorus talks about in his introduction, to have dreams that are meaningful, that are good. And since you're all stuck indoors, I think, you've got time to practice this stuff. A little bit of a self-discipline to make sure that you have meaningful dreams that we can all interpret together. First thing is to eat right. You cannot have fatty food, spicy food, a lot of food, too much wine before bed. You got to eat right. You got to stay chill. Don't have a lot of emotions. Don't be anxious. Don't let staying indoors all the time make you crazy. And don't be a try-hard. Don't try too hard to have meaningful dreams. The reason for this is that dreams come in two flavors. There are meaningful dreams. That's the kind that Artemidorus is talking about. And there are dreams that just come about as a result of like you're worrying about stuff, or you're trying really hard to have a dream, or even just eating bad food that causes you to have weird dreams at night. These two categories of dreams, meaningful and non-meaningful, are important to keep separate. And you want to make sure that you're not confusing yourself by having a lot of non-meaningful dreams because you had to have a KFC double down. I don't know how you got that, given that you can't go to KFC anymore, but maybe you made your own, and that caused you to have indigestion, and that made you have a weird dream, but that weird dream is meaningless because it just comes from your stomach. So follow these three rules, and you're going to have some meaningful dreams that we can talk about in this space. Send me your dreams if you want to. I'll tell you what Artemidorus would say about them. In the meantime, I got some dreams of my own to talk about over the next few weeks. One last thing. If a god talks to you in a dream, if Zeus or Hermes or whoever comes down to you and just tells you something in a dream, well, you don't need a dream interpreter to explain that to you. Just do whatever the god tells you, provided it's not a crime. You didn't hear this from me. I am probably legally prohibited from telling you to do whatever gods tell you in your dreams. Anyway, you don't need a dream interpreter for those dreams. Artemidorus says, straight up divine messages are clear enough that you don't need a dream interpretation for those. But anything else, anything goes. So I hope you all have some good, meaningful dreams over the next however long we're stuck indoors. And I'll be interpreting them from time to time on this stream. I will catch you next week, same time,